Hey everyone, it's Millie.
It's Gabby.
And we're back for another week of Change by Degrees with our summer interview series. And this week we have another special interview.
Our guest today is a super talented woman. Her name is Sallie Keena, and she is a filmmaker, actor, makeup artist, and fellow creative.
According to her website, she is a passionate storyteller and communicator with style. She's also worked on innumerable film projects over the past 15 years, approaching film production with talent honed from a variety of work on set.
Sallie is a detail-oriented director and a trained actor who loves working with actors and allowing space for spontaneous magic to be captured. She has a talent of creating a comfortable environment for first-time on-camera interviewees as well as seasoned pros. You can find Sallie at SallieKeena.com and follow her on Instagram at Sallie Keena on set. Do you want to just kind of start telling us about your time in the film industry, and then we'll kind of jump off of that?
Sure. Yeah. So I started out with a fine arts background, and it's interesting. I was thinking before we chatted, kind of how I came about to work in the industry, and there's a lot of different interesting sort of kismet things along the way. I went to school at VCU, and back in the day, you had to go through a fine arts program before you applied to the discipline of your choice, even if that was photography or film. So that's what I ended up doing. And it was a really nice way, I think, of melding things that had been a part of my identity as a kid, drawing and painting and even photography. And that kind of created this natural progression towards, I applied to photo and I got in, and I kept making these projects that were these long sequences of photos that were really telling a story. And oftentimes they were quite elaborate. I'd have some of my friends and their friends, I'd dress them up in these costumes and have them pose this certain way, and give them characters. And at a certain point, I realized that there were a lot of reasons why I felt like I wasn't a good fit in the photo program, or vice versa. And so after a semester, I changed to film, and it was such a good fit. It was just one of those things that you just know that when it happens. And now looking back, I can see like, oh yeah, like as a kid, I was always like dressing up my brother and sister in costumes and like painting backdrops on a refrigerator box that we played with a lot, and making the neighborhood, having the neighborhoods come over and directing them in like a production of The Little Mermaid with like a boombox.
Love that.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. I'm sure my siblings can attest to all the stuff that I put them through. But it was all so fun. And at the end of the day, one of the reasons why I love working in the film industry is we're all just working together to create something that is really just play pretend. It's a story. It's something that someone thought up, and, it trickled down through all these departments, and all these people who are each an expert in their craft are coming together to have for this common goal. That is ultimately, it's something creative.
That is. I mean, so you started off in photography. Do you still think you learned things in that particular school that you carried over to film?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, being in school for photography, and anything that I studied while I was there, really pushed whatever natural talent or predilections I had, like really pushed them. And I think when you're creating projects in school and you have deadlines, you are being forced to make decisions often quickly. And one of the things that's, I think, very important about film, especially if you are creating films, you're writing, you're a storyteller, you have to communicate something visual very quickly. Whether that's just one image, right? Like, I'm sure you can think of a film where there's one shot and you're like, they've said so much. Or there's a scene, or, where they're telling an entire story just by the way that someone is standing, and the light, and the way that their hair and makeup is done, and the look on their face. Like, so I think, I learned a lot about, I think it gave me more room to explore how I wanted to take photos. And I've learned so much to just believe in the journey and the process, right? Like, I think that anything that you're curious about, that you follow and you do, um, whether that's one photo class or taking photo for a semester, or in my case, like working in the industry, but not necessarily pursuing directing until, a few years ago, all of that's so valuable. Like, and I'm sure there's a lot that I learned that I don't know how to like look back and point to, but you learn to communicate, and I think it helps you to start to figure out your own style. I also really loved the film criticism part because it helped me develop a sense of what it is that I thought was a good film and why, and judging other people's work in an atmosphere that's like a constructive atmosphere.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And seeing so many different points of view and different ways that people can tell a story, I think was really impactful. There's a lot. And I always think like, in my case, I'm really glad that I decided to study something that I was really interested in without any sense of like an end. Sort of, I had no real thought about where it was going to go. Like I didn't go, apply to school thinking I'm going to this school so that I can, do A, B, and C. I had no like 5-year plan or anything. I just was like, I am choosing the path of an artist. This is my life path. People aren't necessarily going to understand it. Um, and yeah, I just was like, this is where I need to be. So I think that if you're always following your gut and your curiosity, um, it will always serve you. And that's not to say if you have if you have a 5-year plan, and this is someone who's like, I'm going to be a doctor, so these are the steps I need to take. Absolutely. Like you need to follow your gut. But in my case, yeah, I think that was interesting. That was like, and I didn't really have a lot of guidance about choosing a career path or college. I slipped my college application under the door of the arts building the day before it was due, or I think it may be the morning that it was due.
Oh, wow.
So the fact that I got into school, that's one of those things that you look back as an adult, as like a more grown up adult, I guess. And I'm like, wow, that's not normal. That's
kind of amazing.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing. Yeah. There's a lot of that looking back. I'm like, I might not have had the like structures or guidance that some other, teenagers had, but I had this sort of like outside magical force guiding me, and I think a lot of that is just your gut. Like you have to just learn how to listen to that inner voice, even when other people are telling you. And honestly, I think a lot of times when people are telling you things from the outside that are negative or critical, they're just placing their own limits on you. Like they're just telling you what they would think in their case because they're not the ones hearing your intuition.
Yeah, I think that's super cool because everything you just said, it resonates, I think, for me and for Millie so much because as creative people, I think, I don't know about people who are more like analytical or more, I don't know, not creative, but just I think for creatives, like it's so interesting how we can trace back. You were talking about your childhood and like how we can trace back to our childhood.
Yeah.
Who we were supposed to be as adults. And like, you remember dressing up and like making your siblings dress up and, almost like you said, like playing pretend and just knowing that like, as you were an adult, you're like, I don't care. I don't have a 5-year plan. I don't really know why, but I just know this is the path that in my gut, like who I'm supposed to be, like I'm supposed to be doing this and I don't know what I'm going to do with it. But I know that if I don't, like, it's just not going to be the life that is fulfilling, or I'm not going to be living out my passions, which is pretty insane. And like, I think that also segues really well into kind of like our first point of how you define success and how you've kind of tried to not, I don't want to say like change the way people think about success, but obviously like for you, it's like, well, as long as I'm happy, as long as I know that what I'm doing is what I should be doing and what my passion is, then, I feel successful. So like, how would you define success in your own life versus kind of like what the world says success is?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's hard. To me, it's something that's always evolving. But I think one day I just sort of realized, or I guess it's sort of this sort of evolved decision or realization that I was like, I have to decide what success is going to mean to me, because only then will it be really meaningful. Just like I have to decide what my own goals are. And I think once you decide what success is going to mean to you, it was interesting. I was talking to, I speak to a really awesome therapist, because I think that in some ways you also, like you were talking about, like, you know, finding clues about what you're supposed to be when you're little. I think in a way you are your own detective. You're like the detective of your life.
Yeah.
And when you're able to like talk things out, a lot of times I'll find clues. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a clue. Cool. That feels really special. Okay, I'm going to hang on to that. But yeah, she asked me, I was talking about how I want to be a really good director. She said, well, how will you know when you're a good director? And I realized that in that cool way that therapists do, she was asking me a question that didn't have a right answer. Yeah. It was literally whatever answer I gave was going to be the right answer. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of told her this vision that I have for, you know, the future. But I thought, I was listing out all these things, and I was like, oh, wow, I'm kind of already doing that now. Like I did a project in December that was so fun. I got to direct. I realized, I was like, wow, I did a lot of those things then. So why does that have to only qualify, you know, 5 years ahead? But yeah, I think for me, success is obviously very personal, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be the one that says like, yeah, you're successful. But to me, I think in my case, it's like, yes, I'm providing for myself, doing something that I enjoy. I'm also taking care of myself. I'm making sure that I have breaks and rest. I'm listening to myself. I'm setting boundaries. You know, something at work, I'm really passionate about creating safe work environments, as well as I'm also very passionate about gender parity, which, if anyone reads my Instagram stories, there's like rants on there sometimes. So welcome, anyone you want. But I think whatever that is for you, it can evolve. But I think it's worth taking time to, it's really just to me, a beautiful form of loving yourself, is saying, these are my goals. This is what it means to be successful. And then once you attain some of that, take a moment to celebrate it. My little brother he's little, he's like in his mid to late 20s, but he just finished an album with his band and sent it off to get mastered. And you know how there's people in your life that you kind of speak into their life or encourage them, but then it encourages you because you're like, oh gosh, I really need to listen to what I'm saying. Yeah. You're like, wow, that sounded cool. Where did that come from? I need to like write it down and put it on my fridge, because that's all for me. And I was like, have you guys celebrated? Like, I know you're at your home, you know, you're not leaving the house, but is there a way that you can celebrate? Can you pop open a sparkling water? Like, can you, like, whatever that is. And I started a thing where I would, for like a short season, anytime something really good would happen, as far as like I would get a good gig, you know, or I would finish a large job, or a film project, I would go to Hank's Oyster Bar in Alexandria and get half a dozen oysters and some French fries and maybe a key lime pie. Slice, not the entire pie. Although, if that's your thing, go for it.
I'm like, if you want the whole pie, get the whole pie.
Yeah, why didn't I actually? Yeah, clearly I have not met my own metrics of success. Yeah. Not buy the entire pie. Revising that. Yeah, I think it's also, when you talk about success, I think it could be this bottomless pit. I hear a lot of successful people talk about how when they got what they thought they wanted, they still felt the same way inside. And so one of the things that I want to do while I'm working really hard and being ambitious is listening to that on the inside of me, that inner voice, and taking a moment to say, hey, you did this thing. Hey, look around you. Like, paying your phone bill doesn't stress you out anymore. Like, you just bought that cute dress and you're wearing it and you feel nice, and like, it's not making it impossible for you to buy gas later. Like, or you just, held yourself in a really great way and kept your cool in a really difficult situation, and a lot of it kind of goes like, I assume it's like almost like self-parenting, but I think otherwise, if we're holding ourselves to be accomplishing these things that we dream about, but then we don't stop to recognize what's happened and be thankful for it, and even think that, like what I was talking about, the magical outside force that you're like, I don't know how part of this happened. Like, half of this was my hard work and ingenuity, but there's also that sparkly gut feeling that led me to this, or this wonderful person that crossed my path, etc., etc. I think the more that we're stopping, even if it's like 5 seconds, in the Target parking lot, to be like, you know what? Things are good. Thank you. This is good. I think it makes it easier to do the bigger things, to do more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's such a healthy perspective, especially for us as creatives, because like you were saying earlier, like our career paths aren't as clearly delineated as others, and we can get really lost within ourselves. And I think we usually consume like the top of anything that we're creating, and we think that what we're creating is lesser than that. So I think it's really healthy to have a viewpoint of success that you've created yourself. Because if we're comparing ourselves to the top films or the top, Spotify top from 100, as me, as a musician, I'm like, well, my stuff doesn't sound like that. It's not performing as well as that, and it's just, we either quit or we have a really bad mental health day or week or month. But I think that's so healthy and needed to be heard, because we don't sometimes support each other as well as we should. And I think coming off of that, I'm curious, like, do people's opinions or evaluations of your work, does that get to you sometimes? Like, how do you deal with that, knowing that you have your own evaluation of your success?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I think there's a couple things. One, I really value the opinions of the people in my sort of inner circle, and I've tried to create, or like, I've tried to recognize a group of people who are in my life who I trust to give work to when it's raw. Whether usually that's a screenplay, like that's usually a script or a rough cut of a short. And those are people that I trust to not only praise me for things that they think are cool, but also tell me, by the way, I think that you need to color correct this one part, or whatever, or this part of this, the story needs some clarification. And that is really, really important to me. So I think that's more of a case of having people that can give you constructive criticism. And sometimes that also means handing over something that's, because you create art and it's so personal. I mean, it's so personal. But I have a couple people that I'm really grateful for, that I know I can send them something and ask and say, hey, this is what I want to know. These are the questions that I want to ask you to answer about this. I think there's always moments where somebody says something about something it's misunderstood. I feel misunderstood, but I've become less and less caring about other people's opinions. I want to be so sensitive to people's feelings, right? Like, I want to create something that's meaningful, that's going to move someone, that's going to speak to someone. I want to create work that feels deep and beautiful and relatable or funny. I want it in that way. I care, but I don't, if somebody is being negative in a way that's destructive or abusive, it doesn't have any meaning to me. So I think having that ability to say what does resonate, like if somebody gives me a massive criticism, I get to decide what of that I use, right? And I've had situations where it was I was in an acting class once, and the coach was like really not. He's one of those yelling coaches, which I'm not cool with. Yeah, it was triggering. It wasn't cute. I had to leave and get a sangria. It was not good. And I like ran and I like went, and he was criticizing me for being too soft spoken.
Mm-hmm.
I ran in my car and I cried. This was a couple of years ago. But what's interesting was I decided to take some truth in what he said and reject all the rest of it. I was like, you know what? That man was right. When I go into an audition and I introduce myself, I am too soft spoken. I've been told this when I was in a play. I've been told this for the past 10 years. He doesn't know my truth, which is the house I was raised in, who I was. Like, he doesn't know my story. But however, as an actor, as a professional actor, this is a piece of criticism that I am going to, hey, that's actually quite helpful. I want to be the best actor I can be. I want to get the acting jobs that I auditioned for. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to learn how to project more. However, the abusive way in which he delivered it, the way in which he, was disrespectful, that I'm going to let that part go. I'm going to go do something that reminds me that I'm valuable, and I love myself. And then, cool. Then tomorrow's another day. So that's kind of like how I handle it, because I'm a sensitive person. I'm definitely like an empath, and I think a lot of creative people are, and it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. But the thing is, it's interesting is like if someone's criticism really hurts you, I've had times where I've had to investigate why, and a lot of times those are clues in my like detective time that I can figure out what's the deeper hurt there that's really hurting. And usually it's something like that I can work on with my therapist. But yeah, I mean, that's something, and some people are not as, affected by it. But as far as creating work, I don't care what people think, because if someone doesn't like a movie that I've made, well, then it just wasn't for them. But there's a lot of people that it is for. I mean, I've had my 91-year-old grandmother told me that she found Moon Eyes relatable. Moon Eyes is a 17-minute short that I made. Well, then Moon Eyes exists for her. It exists for all the people who've watched it and told me that it reminded them of a date they went on, or, it inspired them in some way. So you find your people, right? Like, and I think that's what's important, is like, what are you giving you're spending your time and your energy and your attention on? For every person that doesn't get you or understand you or has a negative opinion, you can close your eyes and remember all the other people around you who will say something kind to you in a second, who are like crazy about you. I try and like keep building up those relationships.
That's so cool, because I think, like you said, finding your people. And I do think that's super important for creatives, because like you said, a lot of creatives are empaths and we feel things so deeply.
Ooh,
not only do
part of the gift. It's your gift, right? But it's also, it can be a burden.
Yeah. It can be like, it's like a double-edged sword. Like it can be both. And I think part of the maybe bad edge is that because we feel things so deeply and we just kind of stay in our minds so much, it's like, I don't know if we're bottling things up, but it's just like we don't realize that. Like you mentioned, you have a therapist, and I'm like, I think everyone should have a therapist. Like everyone should go to therapy, because
it's
so
great,
valuable.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I've realized things. It's changed my life. I went through a lot in I would say like a couple years ago, and I started talking to my therapist during a difficult time. And it's just I think having someone that you talk to regularly also helps you look back and see how far you've come. Because sometimes she'll remind me, she'll say, these are the reasons why you said, you wanted to talk in the first place. And I realize, oh my gosh, all those things have happened now.
Mm.
Okay, we get new goals. So it's also a lovely way of of kind of seeing how much you grow.
Yeah, definitely. And I think whether it be, because I know a lot of people, like, maybe therapy isn't an option, but like you said, having someone to talk to. And I think especially someone who, well, I think it could go both ways, like having another creative to talk to who knows where you're coming from, because creatives feel things so deeply, and it's really hard to explain what you're feeling unless you do it through the avenue or the passion that you have. Like for me, it's writing. For Millie, it's music. For you, it's filmmaking. And I think that's how we express our emotions. So it's really hard to talk to someone who doesn't, I think, get things through that avenue. But at the same time, I think it's better to have, or it's equally important to have someone who is a creative who understands you, as well as someone who's a third party who maybe isn't a creative and who can objectively say, what they're seeing in you or what they're seeing in your work. Like, I think both aspects are kind of important.
But specifically, you're right. Like having another friend who's a creative is really great, because you will speak the same language, and there's a lot less time that you need to, explain yourself. I have a friend who, every once in a while she'll be on a shoot and she'll be like, oh my gosh, I had the most, like, I won't burden with you with it, but I had the most nightmare shoot. And I'm like, no, let's get a coffee and tell me everything. Yeah. Because I've been there. Like she's a few years younger than me. She's so fantastic. And I'm like, no, like I've been on some of the worst film set situations ever. So whatever it is, I've heard it, and lay it on me. Because that friendship goes both ways,
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. I mean, those things that you've said, I wish I heard 2 or 3 years ago, because it's so true. Having to do with professors, like you think you're going to go to an art school and everything's going to be like amazing, and then it's not, and it destroys you. Isolation is the worst. And I think, because I've had like 2 professors I can think of particularly who really thought I just wasn't talented, like meant to be a musician. And I cried so much. And actually I hadn't met Gabby at that point. So it was really lonely, and I almost quit, honestly. Wow. So knowing that people could have helped me through that, and they still have, like, there's still moments that I doubt myself, but being able to, like you said, like, take the good and leave the bad. Like, they were giving me, sometimes it just wasn't helpful at all, but sometimes there were little nuggets here and there that if I was able to kind of separate that in my mind, I would have gotten over it much faster. And 2, it just would have been more helpful to me than it was. But yeah, that's so powerful. And I think it's something that, I mean, applies in college, but even now, like to find a group of people that I can trust, because one of my biggest struggles as a creative is sharing my work. Yeah. I don't know why. It's like the hardest thing to me, but to know that for you, like having a group of people that you trust, it just gets easier. That's just such an encouragement to me, because it's been a struggle. But little by little, like you said, it's good to have people to point out your growth, because I think even if you are your own little detective, you just miss some things like in day-to-day life. Have a few cheerleaders for you, or people to call you out is just incredible. I would say. Yeah,
in a way that is sensitive to yourself as an artist. And here's the thing too, I think about professors is like, someone can help you refine and hone your craft, but they can't talk to you about your gut and your vision and your destiny. Like if you know that something is what you want to do and it's in your heart and your soul, that they can't counsel you on that. Maybe you have a magical professor who's helpful, and that's awesome. But there's so many people out there, who are teaching, who they're just there to refine your craft. But it's hard when your craft is part of your deepest feelings. And that's, I think, where it's hard. Like there's not just a one blanket way of handling it either. But I'm glad that you got through that, and you're still following what you want to do. I think that's really awesome. And that's something that you should celebrate too.
I know. I recently graduated. I'm about to. And I'm trying to celebrate it. It's hard, but
Oh my gosh, yeah. I can only imagine what it must be like to be graduating right now.
Oh, it's been crazy. Like my last semester was a disaster. Like nothing was like you would imagine it to be. And I wasn't even, before this whole situation, I wasn't sure if I wanted to walk or not. But then other things that I was missing out on, like just the chapter and
Yeah.
to like walk off campus the last time, especially after going through all that like heartache to kind of really process things. And that's why I said like having a therapist might really help.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, as a creative, just to have like, I don't know what you would call them, like just stamps and time really help. Because when you're freelancing, like Gabby and I both freelance, even though we have actual jobs.
Yeah.
And it can be so hard to kind of govern your own time and what you're doing and what's a success. Mm-hmm. So having these conversations really, I think, helps us as a community and individually kind of process those things in our lives. Because people understand.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great to talk to you guys and other people who, you know, all the stuff they've gone through is meaningful, you know, and that encourages me too. We all got to stick together.
Yeah. I mean, I think, and one thing I will say, Sallie, is that you just seem so like sure of yourself and confident. And I know that creatives are always constantly growing, but I just love, I love what you said when you were like, yeah, if people don't really like, I don't really care, you know, like I'll take the good and leave the bad and just kind of move on because, and I think a lot of times creatives, we have to do that. A lot of times it's like you put something out there and it comes back to you and no one liked it, but you're like, oh, well, I still like it. And that's hard to say, but it's true. Yeah. Like you just have to listen to yourself and to the story that you wanted to put out into the world. And just because people don't respond to it in the way that you thought they should or thought they would, doesn't mean it's any more less important than somebody else's story.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you never know what you know, when you're creating something out of a place of truth and expressing something, you never know who it's going to resonate with, you know? And thank you for saying that. I still struggle. It's interesting. I was talking to my therapist about confidence too. I still struggle with some, you know, I still struggle with believing in myself in some ways. And it's interesting because one thing that she said to me was that confidence in something that you've done, there's areas in which I'm like, yeah, I got this. Well, it's because I've been doing it for 15 years. But there's other ways in which I have to rely on the knowledge of, oh, I can do all of these skills. Like this is the list of things required. Yeah, I can do all of these. I don't have that feeling though. I don't have that feeling of, oh yeah, I've done this over and over again. And that's something that I'm working on. Is just knowing, well, on paper it's there. And the other thing I was going to say that's really helpful, has been really helpful for me that I've now had a lot more time to do, is I try and just devour, you know, content from somebody who's in my craft. So I've listened to a lot of interviews of actors and filmmakers and directors. And that's been really, really encouraging, because they're all just real people, like people who I look up to, you know. It's great hearing their stories because you realize like, oh yeah, like they might be on a much bigger stage, right? But they also were someone who was, you know, who went to art school and was just like celebrating their own weird. And then they found somebody who appreciated their weird. I listened to one of them, for example, is listening to the Armchair Expert podcast, Melissa McCarthy. That was a fun interview.
Oh, cool.
You know, and figuring out like her basically getting a job that let her celebrate. So I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fan, by the way.
I love Gilmore Girls.
Yes. Like, yeah. It's very, like to the point where now I watch a lot of episodes of Murder, She Wrote, and I will take a photo of someone who I know has been on Gilmore Girls, who is on Murder, She Wrote, and send it to my cousin, who's also a major Gilmore Girls fan. There's a lot of crossover in those two shows.
Yes.
Anyways, so, you know, just the point where like she was on Gilmore Girls, which was a great gig for her, but didn't let her show the full range of what she could do. Didn't let her show her own personal weirdness. I think another thing, you know, I was realizing when you were saying like, oh, you're confident in being yourself. I grew up in a place where I was always the only girl at the mall with purple hair. And this was the mid 90s.
Love it.
I had my youth group leader tell me that she was scared of me when she first met me.
What the heck?
Yeah, that's not like a good look for a youth. Yeah, but that's
not good look.
It's fine. This was a long time ago. Like, anyways, it's actually not fine. Don't ever say that to a teenage girl.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you guys. I'm telling anybody who's listening.
Right.
Yeah, I know that you know that. So I think also I realized, like, looking back, I've always done what felt right, even if that was very counterculture. And I think I really liked expressing myself, and, you know, I would I'd make my own clothes and wear like fairy wings to school and stuff. So that part, I'm used to people looking at me weird. And it's interesting too, because a lot of times if I wonder if I'm doing things right, or I'm excited about a new accomplishment, it's that version of me that I think about. Like I'm like, that 15-year-old thinks I'm awesome right now. Cool. You know, that little punk girl. So I think that's another thing too that's interesting. Like, you might be as however old you are, but you're still all those other ages, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's a cool way of thinking about it. Like, I think when we were younger, it's so much easier to just not care what people think. And then when you become an adult, you value people's opinions so much more.
Right.
But
you're like, I'm a rebel. It's just part of my identity. Like, I'm wearing ripped fishnets, whatever. Right. And then we get older and we lose a bit of that, but we can still do it in our work. We're still doing it in our work, right? We're still creating things.
Wow. Yeah, no. Keep that imagination, because you can become so close-minded when you pass like the age of maybe 18, 21.
Right.
Yeah.
It destroys a little piece of you and you have to get it back.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. That's a really good point. Yeah, maybe it's that still having that fire of creativity. Yeah, not losing that. I think about her and I'm like, I want her to still think I'm cool.
Yeah, because it's like, I guess you kind of have to think like, you know, I think we always should be improving on our past selves. So it's kind of like when, like you said, like you were that 15-year-old and it's like, you didn't care. Like, yeah, I'm going to wear fairy wings to school and I'm going to have purple hair. And like, why not? Like, yeah, do it. Who cares? And then, you know, you get to be an adult. And I think we try to fit into a box that's socially acceptable. And, you know, sure. But at the same time, it's like, you know, you might not be wearing fairy wings to work every day, but that might manifest itself into like a different area of your life. So
100%. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm dressing appropriate for the work and the places that I'm doing. Which nowadays, purple hair actually isn't. I mean, it used to be way more shocking than it is now.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, I worked at places like, you know, Capitol Hill and these Fortune 500 companies. I'm wearing a blazer sometimes, but yeah, that attitude, 100%, it shows up in your work. And there's other things. Yeah, there's other things that you channel that energy to. That's very, well said.
That's so cool. I love that. I think, and you kind of talked a little bit about this, but kind of just like conflicts and barriers in your field, but it really sounds like once again, I know that everyone's continually growing, but like you kind of have a handle at least on who you are and what you want to accomplish. So it's kind of, maybe, I don't want to say easier because everyone goes through struggles, but at least clearer to see how to overcome barriers.
I appreciate that. That's really encouraging for me to hear. Because I still have days where I think I know exactly what I want to do, but I don't know how it's going to happen. And I still feel like there's a lot of barriers, but I just have to trust that because it's so strong in my gut, that it'll work out. But I mean, honestly, the first one, when you say that, I'm like, it's sexism. Like I talk about it a lot, but it's still constantly an issue, and it's so pervasive. Fortunately now, I think Hollywood is asking for way more female-led TV shows. I've written a show which our mutual friend Lana is acting in with me once we get to shoot the proof of concept video, a TV show that I want to pitch about. It's two female leads, and they form a detective agency in their small town, even though they haven't seen each other in 10 years because of a family feud. And so I hear now that, I used to live in LA and I have a lot of friends there. And so I do see things changing and Hollywood asking for way more projects, female-led projects. I want to write and direct for TV, and I love acting, so I still want to act. But there's still so much sexism. I deal with it all the time. Especially in the DC area, I think it's a lot. I think it's probably worse here, but that's a whole other thing. But yeah, I think barriers, there's always going to be yourself, things that you kind of have to get over. Obviously, yeah, there's still a lot of things for me personally, but a lot of it I think is mental. And so I'm constantly trying to assess what it is that's holding me back from believing in myself, or why am I overthinking something? Because a lot of times I think, I don't know if you guys have this issue as like an empath issue, is that you think about things a lot. Yeah. So I have a friend who's a producer, and I also produce, but I see her just doing things really quickly. I'm like, wow, you didn't even like think through all of your 10 emotions about sending an email. You just sent that email. So I try and surround myself with people who I like the way they work and I want to learn from them. She's one of them. I love the way she works. It's amazing. I'm like, wow, you're so fat. You just do stuff. You just get stuff done. And I sometimes my emotions will get in the way. Obviously, I'm running a business, so it's not to the point where like every day I'm in the fetal position crying. But like, and actually, I joined a female-centric co-work space last year, and I've seen, the incidence of me putting stuff off because I'm overthinking it has dwindled because of that. Now, of course, it's closed. It's the wing, but of course, right now it's closed.
Right.
But yeah, so I would say it's also good. And one thing I'm trying to do is like find and surround yourself with people who either have the job you want or are really good at doing a job in the way that you want to be good at. So I try and befriend those people, and then don't let them go. Sit next to them, buy them a lavender latte, admire the way that they just clickety-clack away at those emails, or, call that whatever.
No, that's so funny. Women in the workplace, and then women as creatives who we're still fighting that battle. And I think seen by other women, like, it's just, wow. I struggle with standing up for myself as an individual, especially as a woman, because I think I'm going to be perceived as mean or BITCH.
Ridiculous.
Having someone like Gabby has really helped, because a year ago I probably wouldn't have said anything, and there's things that have been happening recently, and she's like, no, you should do that. And I've done, not all the time, sometimes I really fall out of my face, but just those little victories to celebrate that. And even that if you do get perceived some way as a woman, to be like, but that's okay, because I know who I am and that I'm correct. Because opinions can really mess with your mind. Again, like a year ago, I'd be like, oh my gosh, people are going to think I'm overstepping my boundaries or think I'm disrespectful. And then now I can look at that and be like, well, no, I was just standing up for myself like anyone else would.
Right.
So I'm just so interested in you kind of bringing that conversation into the film industry, because I'm sure you've had
Well, and one thing I think about a lot, and I've had the same journey. I mean, I used to be someone who, when I look back, I think I did the first big budget movie where I was a makeup artist on maybe 10 years ago or over 10 years ago. And when I think about some of the stuff I used to deal with versus how I handle it now, I've learned a lot. And yeah, it's hard. And so in the film industry, the way I see it, I think it's a bit easier, because if someone thinks I'm difficult and that's creating conflict for me, I'm only going to have to deal with it for as long as the gig is. right? If you're in a workplace with someone, that's right. But either way, my thought is you correct it early and just handle it then. And so I guess I would say I have a couple different ways of dealing with stuff like that. And when I'm saying stuff like that, I mean like someone being inappropriate, making me uncomfortable, or just having to set boundaries. I've learned that you basically tell people who you are, right? And I've watched a lot of men. I've watched a lot of the way men behave. And I've learned a lot from watching male directors over the past 10 years on, hundreds and hundreds of film sets. And a lot of times I will think to myself, now, I'm going to ask for this, and I feel like I'm being difficult. However, what if I was a male director? How would he handle this? And I look at the way that a lot of, and some of these guys, there is toxic masculinity. They are walking in the room. They just act like the room is like lucky to have them. And I've seen guys just create a really toxic environment by being incredibly negative. Of course, there's also male directors who just walk. They just walk into the room with the privilege that they have. It's just something inherent to them. And they behave in a way where they're like, people are going to listen to me when I speak, right? People are going to like, justify anything that I say. Whatever. That's obviously a whole other thing too. But I see it a couple different ways. I want to set the tone early so that people know how to treat me for the rest of the time, whether that's like, oh, okay, this is what she needs to do her job. This is what, to ask like, oh, hey, do you guys have an extra light? Or, hey, we need water for the steamer, that kind of a thing, right? That's how I'm part of how I'm doing my job. Like if I'm, let's say I'm doing styling. But then there's also the issue of what you're saying, Millie, about how when Gabby came along, she helped you see where you needed to speak up, right? And I think about not only my younger friends who are in the industry who maybe are not as like, I want to say like weathered by their like time on set. It's like being like, I don't know, like I've been in the circus too long, kids, or like, the popcorn's stale now. No, it's not like that. I love the film industry, but like, it's not my first rodeo. I don't want the 18-year-old girl to come on set and have someone make her feel uncomfortable the way that I've felt. I want to handle it now to try and perpetuate a safe environment for whoever is coming after me. There are other women who are coming after me when I've moved on to different jobs, and I want the film industry to be a safer place for them. So my hope usually is by telling a man that it's not okay for him to pressure me into telling him how old I am and whether or not I'm married, which is a real thing that happened. I hope that after me telling him that that's not okay, he learns so that next time there's a young woman or anyone working with him, he doesn't try and have that same conversation with them. For me, it helps me to think about other people, right? So when you are standing up for yourself, you're standing up for all women, really, right? And that helps take the pressure off me. So I'm not like, oh, you're being difficult or you're creating waves. And I know that I'm sure that I have lost some clients or jobs by saying, no, we have to handle this. This person said this and they can't be hitting on me while I'm trying to do my job and I'm clearly not interested, or whatever it is. It's hard though. It's hard. We shouldn't have to deal with our job being difficult or feeling like we're being difficult for asking what we need. And a lot of it is systemic. And I'm really sorry that you have to deal with that. And it makes me tired. Like, it makes me tired and it makes me need ice cream. And that's probably why I've watched Gilmore Girls a lot, because it's a lot of good, strong, female maternal energy and some really nice men. Even Jess, who's actually my favorite.
Yes.
Love to see it.
It's just, yeah, it's lovely. Jess really becomes a wonderful person too, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a bit of a rant, but
No, it's all good.
Yeah, and I would think I also this is going to be on like a more practical note.
Mm-hmm.
I would say if you're having issues, if you're if I'm on set, I try and put things in writing. Like I try and send the producer an email and be like, "This is what we talked about today," just in case, so that it's on paper. But otherwise, I love working in the film industry. It's such a fun job. And I wanted to tell you guys just quickly about like some of the most fun things
Yes, please
that
do.
I've gotten to do because of the film, like just working in film, whether that's like, doing hair and makeup or doing wardrobe or as an actor. And obviously I've directed a few things, but those are my own projects that are smaller projects. But I've gotten to be a possible spy who is maybe lying to the government. I'm in the Spy Museum. If you ever get to go to the Spy Museum,
Oh my god!
I'm in a video of the Spy Museum. It's really fun.
Oh my god, so cool.
I've made fake snot. That was really gross. Had it dripping out of I've done that twice actually. Dripping out of someone's nose.
Oh my god!
I've spent the night. Actually, I stayed up all night in a lighthouse in the middle of the ocean.
That's cool.
Wow.
I've been in the reading room at the Library of Congress. I have a list here because let me think of some cool things to tell you. While they had their first drone flight inside the Library of Congress, the reading room. I've gotten to film inside the Air and Space Museum, and I've roamed some of the Smithsonian museums while they were empty and closed. Just walked around them by myself.
Awesome. Yeah.
I've gotten to talk to a leading astrophysicist about time travel. Like I just had him in my makeup chair and I was like, can we talk about time travel? I got to work with a female astronaut and that was amazing because I looked back on my Facebook a while ago and it was like, can I just be friends with some female astronauts like as a joke? And I'm still in touch with her and her sister. So yeah, put those crazy goals out there because it'll happen. I've gotten to sit as a stand-in. I got to sit in these gorgeous, I love old cars, in these 1930s and a 1930s picture car on Constitution Avenue while it was closed down for a film set. That was for The Plot Against America, which is on HBO.
Yeah.
I've gotten to be like a settler in Jamestown fighting someone else for an ear of corn. Oh And I think I just met so many wonderful people, whether it was someone in a different discipline or craft that I was working alongside, just so many wonderful people. It's an industry that you're there because you want to be there because you worked really hard to get in, right? It's very rare that you meet someone who's a real stinker who just hates their job. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's such a delight. I've had so many great conversations that I'll remember forever. And yeah, it's wonderful and magical. I've gotten to do things and talk to people that I otherwise would not have, I would never have known how I would have met them,
Yeah. And I think that really is like, that's like the cherry on top. Like you get to you get to live out your passion and you get to do all these really cool things for a job. And then it's like, you meet all these cool people and it's just like, it's just so cool. Like, and like you said, when you, like what you said earlier, like when you speak up for yourself, you're speaking up for all women. In the same way, I think when you go into a creative field, you're showing other creatives behind you, like this is possible, like we can do this. And just that small little rap sheet you just gave us, because I know you have so much more that you've done and that you love, but those little things that you said are not little. Like those are big accomplishments. Like those are things that people just like dream about doing. And just by you just saying those things, it just encourages everyone out there, whether they're in the film industry or want to go into the film industry or writing or music, that like these crazy things are not so crazy. Like they're pretty practical and you can do them because people need creatives.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that so much. That's so encouraging. And you're right. Like I hope that me stepping out and being brave and working hard leads to other people chasing their passion. I'm really passionate about encouraging other people to chase that thing that they know they can't live without doing.
Yes.
So I hope that is a result of me sharing anything, is that somebody, believes in what they want to do.
Yeah, definitely. Sallie, this has been so awesome. I think this is so great. Thank you so much for coming
Thanks
on
for
here
having me. Oh my gosh. This was like such a bright, this is best part of my week.
Oh, awesome. Yay. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys are so great. And I hope that we get to meet in person and, have a coffee or something when all this is over.
Yes,
this
definitely.
is so much fun. I mean, Gabby's a writer, I'm a musician, filmmaker. I couldn't think of anything better. Where could people find you, though, if they want to follow you?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram. It's at Moonlight Detective, just as it sounds, Moonlight Detective, and that's the name of my production company.
Okay.
And the website is moonlightdetective.com, or you can also do SallieKeena.com, SallieKeena. If you want to follow just wardrobe styling work and hair and makeup that I've done on film, that's Sallie Keena on set on Instagram. I think if you pull up Moonlight Detective, you'll see it. So I'm mostly in those places. I'm mostly on the Moonlight Detective Instagram. But my website has one short up that I made while in quarantine that you guys saw.
Yes, it was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, you guys should definitely check that out. So much fun. I've enjoyed our conversation so much. I hope we can have you back on. I mean, if you listen to any of our episodes, we always end up talking about movies and series and get so sidetracked. But we'd love to just have another opportunity.
Oh, please, let's do that. Yeah. I would love that because a lot of people, I think, feel like they're running out of things to watch. And I have so many suggestions. And I love movies and TV, movies in general. I would love to nerd out with you guys.
Yeah, then we'll definitely have to have you back so we can talk about different films because Millie and I mean, somehow the conversation always, it doesn't matter what episode we're recording, it always veers toward film and movies. So we'll have to have you back.
Oh, yeah. Okay, great. Well, I look forward to that then.
Yes.